event or wherever you're joining from. I'm William, Events and Communications Manager here at CareerFoundry, and I'm very happy to introduce Craig again Craig Hansen for an intro to Adobe XD workshop. We did this a while back and it was very popular, and I can see by the registrations today it's also a very popular topic for all of our lead base. So thank you very much for attending. Whilst people are joining, because there's a big crowd tonight, if you just want to pop in the chat your name and where you're joining from, we'd love to see where everyone's joining from, and we want to make this as interactive as possible. So don't be afraid to reach out. Whilst people are joining, I'm very, very briefly going to introduce CareerFoundry. So we were established in 2013, and we are an online school for career change. So some of you may have seen, we've got different programs online. So we've got the UX design program, UI design program, data analytics, web development, digital marketing, and we take students through the whole journey. So we take you from scratch. We give you a dual mentorship model. So you get a mentor and a tutor. We develop all the curriculum in-house. And then once you progress through the program towards the end, we've also got career specialists to help you out with your portfolio, but also getting that job, landing that job in tech. So that's what we do. Hi, everybody. Hello from the UK, Canada, India. I love that. Keep the questions coming whilst we're doing this. You may have seen also on the right-hand side in the handout section, I have shared the Adobe XD handout for today. So if you can just download that, and that will be the handout that Craig is working along with in this session. Yeah, so as we're working along, if there's any like technical questions or anything you just don't understand, I will be taking questions as we go along, but anything that's a little bit more general about the design industry, maybe working as a UI designer, we're going to be having a Q&A at the end. So the more general questions I'll store and we'll ask them at the end. So Craig, I think I'll just hand it over to you, and I'll disappear into the background, and I'll just be the background voice.
Sounds good. All right, thanks for that introduction. I'm Craig Hansen, and I've been a mentor with CareerFoundry for about 3 years, maybe just a little over 3 years, with the UI immersion course. And William and I have been doing these webinars in XD as well as some Figma ones for about 9 months. It's always fun to see where everybody's joining from, India and UK, New York, etc. I saw Denver in there. I was born and raised there, and I saw Fort Collins. I went to college there, so that's fun. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll kind of get started. So my hope today is to do an introduction, as the title says, to the interface, and then also just kind of hopefully, I don't know, demystify some of the design process. We're going to recreate sort of an Instagram-like photo feed, and we're going to do it using pretty simple things like circles and rectangles. And I just want to show you that the creativity comes from you and not so much from some, magical tool that's really, really difficult to navigate, because it's not. So we'll get, let me even zoom a little bit more. We'll get kind of a macro view of what we're looking at here. So the toolbar is right here in XD, and you've got kind of your direct selection tool. It's this gray arrow, and we use that quite a bit. And the keyboard shortcut for that is V. And if you've downloaded this file, you'll have all of this. The most important one is definitely the V. If I were drawing, say, a rectangle over here and let go, it's going to stay in the rectangle. I need to click V to get back to the direct selection so I can move it into place. The same would be true for any of these tools. So that's probably the most important one to remember. The rest of the key commands, you'll learn the ones you need, and you'll not worry about the ones that you don't. So then these are pretty obvious. We've got a square tool, a circle tool, triangle tool, and a line tool, and they do all exactly what you would think they might do. The pen tool, which you can draw straight lines, or if I click and don't let go with my mouse and start dragging, I can start to create curved lines, and these are called Bezier curves, and you can sort of play with them and do more custom things. The pen tool is awesome. It exists in all design programs, but it's a little bit more advanced than we're probably going to play with too much today. I would suggest that you have a good time with that one on your own. T for text, it's literally the T over there. And then also on my keyboard, if I just click T, I can start typing. It will usually default to whatever font and whatever color I was last using. So right now it's in white. You probably can't see it at all, and it's kind of small, but that's that. This is our artboard, and so let me zoom out just a little bit. The entire gray area, this entire area, is called the pasteboard, and you can absolutely draw things and type things in there without an artboard. But when you start actually working, you're going to want, some sort of iPhone or some sort of laptop dimension. You're going to want an artboard. So that's what this is. It's A for artboard, or you can just come over here and click it. And you'll see that this changed. So this is the second part of the interface I want to go over, and this is called the inspector, and it is responsive. So let me actually stop with the artboard and go back over here real quick. So if I'm selecting, say, this circle, I get information over here in the inspector about that circle. It tells me that it's 54 pixels by 54 pixels. It tells me its XY coordinates based from this top left. It tells me the color. I can change that color, etc. If I click on the pasteboard, just like I'm just out here clicking, it really doesn't tell me much of anything because there's not much to tell. If I were on a typography layer, it would tell me that I have Helvetica Neue, that it's 42 points, etc. So this is a really important part of the interface because it constantly changes depending on what you're doing. So now let me go back to that artboard. It has changed to give me some very common devices such as iPhone 13s, Google Pixels, some iPads, some different kind of default shapes for browsers, even some social media like Instagram stories and things of that nature. And so if you just click on this one, it pops up. So now I have what's called an artboard, and it's delineated from the pasteboard by being white, and I can design in here, and whatever I put in here will then show up in my layers panel. So that's what we're going to look at next. All this will, of course, make tons more sense once we actually get to designing. It's a little abstract when you're looking at it this way. So let's zoom in really close here. So there's three things happening down here in the bottom left. You've got your document assets. It's got a little kind of like bookmark kind of situation there. I've actually saved 3 colors that I want to use for later. It's real easy to do if you just need to draw something and make it a color. Let's say I want it to be this color. And while it's selected, I just click this plus, and it gives it to me as a saved color. The same can be done for typography, for components that you might use over and over and over, like a button in an interface. So that's a real nice panel to be in, the document assets panel. Most of the time, you're actually going to be in the layers panel, and it's just these 2 stacked kind of layers, for lack of a better word. And it'll tell you the different artboards that you've put here. And if you open these up, it'll tell you all the different things that live within them, and etc. And then finally, this little guy that looks like a plug or a Lego, that's called plugins. And plugins are a really cool tool for designers. A really great time saver. You'll want to explore them on your own a lot. I think you'll be able to see these. So hang on just one second. If I go up and say browse plugins, let me see if you're seeing that. I'm afraid you're not gonna. I think it's important enough that I'm going to share my screen in a slightly different way. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to show you my whole desktop just briefly so you can see this. So if I go up to the top nav here and go to plugins and I say browse plugins, this window comes up. And I can then, and right now I want a filter of XD, and I can click that here. And then I can just type whatever I want. So let's say I wanted, I don't know, we're going to use icons later, so we'll just type in icons, and I hit return. It gives me a big list of pre-existing icons that some other designer or another design studio or whomever have designed and made available for you to install. And you can just quickly install them. You can see that I actually have this icons for design installed already. And when you do so, in the plugins menu here that I was showing you, you'll see that I've got icons for design. All of these, angle, lorem ipsum, rotato, and unsplash random image, were all found in that same way with that that plugins menu. All right, so I'm going to go back to just sharing the XD interface so that it's as large as possible for you all. And we'll zoom in one more time. Let's make sure that we've covered off on that pretty good. I'm feeling like that was pretty good for the interface. It'll make more sense. I'll go through this real quick. So the key commands are for rectangle. They've tried to make this fairly easy. I'm not really sure why it's not C for circle, but it's E for ellipse. And you'll see that it turns blue. Again, I know it's probably pretty small on your screen, but the selected tool turns blue. I forget what triangle is. A student one time actually told me, and I've forgotten again. It doesn't really matter. It's not that hard to go back up and just click it. L for line, P for pen, T for text, A for artboard, and Z for zoom. And if you're coming from a different program like, say, Sketch or Figma, that one's really, really common or really, really comfortable for you because you have to do that. One nice thing about Adobe products is you can also hold Command or Control, depending on if you're using a Mac or a PC, and your space bar. And if you notice, my cursor right now is a normal cursor, like the black triangle. And if I hold Command and space bar, it turns into a zoom tool. I can make a selection. It'll zoom in on that. And when I let go, I'm actually still in that direct selection tool. So it's kind of a little workaround so that you're not constantly hitting Z and then V and then Z and then V, or constantly going over here and changing your tools. All of these things come with time, of course, and I would never expect someone who's brand new to this to use all of the key commands properly or even necessarily know them. I'm just giving them to you as a little cheat sheet. Yeah, all right, so what we're going to design today is essentially a long scrolling photo feed, similar to something like Instagram. And Instagram's kind of an interesting app. It doesn't necessarily ever ask you to sign in. It's like we all made an account one time and it forever remembers us, which is cool. Obviously, it's nice. But generally speaking, you'd probably want to set up a little flow like this, like some sort of sign in. Maybe you'd create a profile and add a picture and tell something about yourself. Maybe you'd click up here and do some searching, and your results would happen here. Maybe you like this one, so you click that. And maybe you'd review it or save it for later. I didn't create this, but this is a pretty common little, very lo-fi wireframe. It's a good idea to do, honestly. Now today, of course, is intro to XD, or intro to UI design with the use of a software like XD. So we're not going to take the time to actually draw. But I cannot stress enough that generally starting with pencil and paper, it doesn't matter how good of an artist or drawer you are, is a really great step. So I'm just saying that would kind of probably happen here. And again, Instagram is kind of different that way. Like I said, we don't have to do these signups and whatnot. There are, of course, profile pages and such. They do exist somewhere within Instagram. But our day-to-day use of it is technically just kind of like it loads, and we start with whatever the algorithm thinks we should see first. So, all right, so let's zoom in. We're going to look at our first screen. Actually, let me pause for a moment. William, is there any questions I should be answering right now?
So far, we're good. There's just some general questions, which I'll be taking at the end, so nothing specific.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I've kind of put some little annotations at the top of each of these artboards for what we're going to be doing. So first, we just need to create the artboard, and then we're going to add some shapes to it that will be a back button, a little menu, and some avatar and icon placeholders. So I'm going to hit A for artboard. And I designed this on the iPhone 13 and 12 Pro Max. So I'm going to go ahead and click that again so that we're just building on the same thing. It puts it right below it, which is wonderful. That's exactly where I want it to be. And now we've kind of got apples to apples. I'm not going to worry about exact pixel dimensions and like making this the exact same, but it's nice to have something similar down below to start playing with. All right, so for a back button, there's multiple ways we could do it. I'm going to draw a very small rectangle, about like so. That might even be too big. And I'm going to, I want to open up the colors. Remember I told you I'd save some colors. I'm going to do everything in this kind of light gray to begin with for my artboard. I'm sorry, for my wireframes. So I want to make one of those, and then I'm going to copy it. There's multiple ways you can copy. You'll see it says rectangle. I could either, just like Word or Google or pretty much anything, I could Command or Control C, Command and Control V. And if you watch the layers, I now have another rectangle. You don't see it over here because it put it directly over the top, but I have two of them. Another way I could do it is to select it, and holding Option on a Mac or Alt on a Windows, I can just drag one over. That's my preferred method, honestly. And then if I hover near, I'm going to even zoom in closer because this is a very small little asset. If I hover really near the corner, I get a little sort of rotation icon. So it stops being the direct selection tool and starts being a rotation. If I'm perfectly over the top of it turns into a scale. So I could scale it up and down, or I don't want to do that. I want to rotate. So I'll get close and I'll just rotate it until it's like that. And then I'll just snap these two together. And then I can group them and I can name them back. It's a really good idea to name all your things as you go, so that you don't end up with 72 layers with, rectangle 21. That doesn't make any sense to anybody, including yourself, and certainly not to a developer. If I zoom completely out, whoa, wow, I didn't mean to go that far out. If I zoom out, that feels like a decent sized back button. I don't have any problem with that. So I'll move it down slightly, but that seems good. So then I'm going to zoom back in, like way in. There we go. And I'm going to hit E for ellipse. And do you see how it made that little blue guide? XD is great that way. It tells me where things are centered. So it's actually going to tell me that's the absolute top. That's the absolute bottom. This is the center. And for that little kind of kebab menu, I actually want it to be centered with my back button on the other side of the screen. XD defaults to always drawing with a white fill and a dark gray border. For my wireframe, as I mentioned, I want everything to be kind of this gray. So I'm just going to go like that. And I'm going to just use the eyedropper. There's a little eyedropper here, and you'll see I can just select that. It's another way to do it without having to constantly change over to the assets. So now I have ellipse 10, because there's so many other ellipses in here from before. This is the 10th time a circle has been drawn, essentially. So like I said, not super intuitive. So I've copied 3. Again, XD is super cool. It tells me the distance between things. It tells me when it's 3 pixels apart so that they're all even. I selected all 3. And how did I select all 3? I don't want to go too fast. If I click on something, I select 1. And I could then shift click, and that would give me all 3. I could also click in the layers, shift click, shift click. That's another way. Or I can just click anywhere in the sort of negative space and just drag whatever. So I'm clicking and not lifting my mouse, basically. And whatever I kind of slide over is selected. Again, 6 and 1/2 dozen of the other. I'm going to group, and that was Command G. I could also have right clicked, and you'll see group. And that makes it a little folder. And I'm just going to call that menu. And move that below the back menu, or the back button. We're going to zoom out a little bit. I'm just Command minusing for that. Select it and move it over. So pretty quickly, with 2 rectangles, I've made an arrow back button kind of thing. And with 3 ellipses, circles, I've created a recognizable menu. I then need to make a placeholder for the first image in our photo feed. So I clicked R. I could have also just gone up here. And I'm just going to draw an approximate shape. Again, it always defaults. I do wish it would not do that. It is one thing that kind of annoys me. I'll turn off the border. It looks like it disappeared, but it's just because it's white. And then I'm going to say, make it that gray. I'll go back to my layers. I'm going to move that down below. And I think this will make more sense in a second why I keep kind of moving things. It's a good idea to name your layers in your layer panel. From top left to bottom right kind of is mimicked top to bottom. So I've got a back button, and I've got a menu, and I've got a rectangle. I could name that, probably should, image 1, something like that, because it's going to become an image. And then let's go back up here because I forget what I need to put. So I just need 2 more circles. They're going to eventually become little like and comment buttons. So currently they're just going to be placeholders. And I also need to make an avatar, the user avatar. So I will come over here, and I'm just going to draw a circle. Let's make it like that, because it's the user. We'll make them a little bigger. I'll turn that off. I'll click and there we go. And then I could draw more circles myself, or I could just copy and paste it. I want it to be slightly smaller. Let's say something like that. So how did I make it smaller? I hovered over one of the corners, and that gave me the, let me go way closer. I hovered over one of the corners, and that gave me the scale instead of the rotate scale. And if I don't hold shift, I can create a lot of weird shaped ovals. I actually want to make a perfect circle, so I just hold shift and it scales proportionally. And then I can just copy and paste by selecting Command or Option or Alt. So let's zoom out. Let's see if that's feeling pretty good. I think that's fine. That's a good start for what we're going to want here. I literally used 3 rectangles and I guess it was 6 circles to create the beginnings of my wireframe of my photo sharing app. Any questions on this one?
The questions so far are still general, so I think we can continue.
Great. All right. So the next step is to add typography. And I, well before this webinar, of course, had kind of thought about what I wanted. And I thought Instagram's logo is kind of scripty, calligraphy-like. So I went and found this font called Brush Script. And then I'm using Helvetica. You can use whatever fonts you want. It's possible you won't have Brush Script if you're using Windows. I'm almost positive it's a system font for Mac, but it doesn't matter. You can style it however you want. If you're following along, you could make this not at all look like Instagram. However, there would probably, oh wait, where did it go? Where did that file go? Oh no. There's probably would be a step where every single bit of your typography, in fact, would be, let's just make it Arial, whatever, so that nothing would be actually styled, because you don't necessarily know what you're trying to do at first. So I just want to make you understand that you wouldn't necessarily just immediately know Brush Script. That's absolutely the font, and the way that you select fonts in XD is over here in the inspector. It's in the text area. And so again, this is telling me I have Arial currently, that it's 55 point, that it's italic, that it's center justified, so that regardless of how big or small it gets, it would stay nicely in the center of my screen. I could make it all caps. I could make it all lowercase. So similar to a lot of programs, again, that you're maybe familiar with. And then if I click this little toggle, I get all the fonts that are installed on my computer. And being a designer, I have tons of fonts. And it's as quick and easy as clicking that to change it. That was not a super different font. Let's try and do that better. So let's go to, oof, I don't even know where I am. There we go. I'm choosing all very similar sans serifs accidentally. Let's try American type. There we go. All right. So, and why does it keep pushing the M down? It's because the font itself is too large for my text box, and so it has to go somewhere, and it pushes it down. So yeah, you can just select your fonts like that. Like I said, this one is called Brush Script. So I typed in BR, and it starts to autofill, and I can just click Brush Script. And we're back to what I had originally designed. So the font choosing is real intuitive in XD and fairly easy. So now we're gonna copy this screen. I could of course hit A for artboard, and I could hit iPhone 13, 12 Pro, and it could move it over there for some random reason. But I actually don't want anything that I've designed already to get lost. So I'm gonna select that artboard, and I could either Command Control C, Command Control V. It's a totally fine way to do it. Or I can, just like anything else, I want to copy, I can Option on a Mac or Alt and just drag it over. And that's what always feels most comfortable to me. There's really no problem with the Command C, Control V. I just showing you, different ways of doing it. So now we're going to zoom way in, and we're going to type T for text, or I could just come over here and we're going to type in Latergram. And as I said earlier, it actually sort of defaults to whatever font you already were using. So that saved me some time. Now you'll see how that's not always so convenient. So I'm going to hit T for type again. and I'm going to type in whatever this first person's name is, Jane Smith, and all kinds of problems. First of all, it's center justified, so it's like shooting off to the side. So let's make it left justified. That would be really weird if everything was written in the same font as the logo of a company. It's huge, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and just type. I was using Helvetica. You can use whatever font you want. Just something more clean and simple, legible. And then that's of course massive. I don't know. Let's say maybe 18 points. And you'll see I'm typing these in. I want it to be regular. I could make it, of course, bold. Yeah, maybe let's make it bold, actually. Bold's kind of nice, and 18. And similar to everything else in XD, it gives me those little guides to tell me when things are centered. So I want it centered with the avatar that eventually is going to be filled with a picture of what Jane looks like. All right, so then we're going to zoom in. We want to make like as though this person, after posting their picture, they wanted to tell us about it. And there's a couple ways we could do that. I could go back over here to the T for type, and I could click, and I didn't let go of my mouse. I can click and drag, and then I could just start typing. But this doesn't look very real, and I don't know what she wants to talk about, her photo. So this isn't great. And so I either have to, as a designer, I either have to think about what really is going to be written there, or I need to use placeholder text. And placeholder text is called lorem ipsum. It's maybe Latin. I think it's kind of fake Latin. And a really nice way to get it is to use a plugin. So I'm going to just draw a rectangle, and I'm going to, it doesn't even matter what color it is because it's going to get changed here in a second. I just want to make sure that it's centered. So XD gives me that little guide, and I'm going to go over to my plugins, and I'm going to hit lorem ipsum. And it gives me a couple of options in the dropdown. It says fill with placeholder text. What does it mean, fill? It means I'm already selecting something, and instead of filling it with a color or a pattern, I'm saying fill it with placeholder text. So all I do is click. It gives me a couple more little options. I have always found the default settings to be completely fine. So I just hit insert text. And now it's not a red rectangle anymore. It's a box of somewhat realistic looking filler text. And of course, it's massive. There's way too much of it. Nobody writes this much on social media. So let's say I want it to be 16 point. I want it to match my other fonts. So I want it to be Helvetica. And I want it to be that gray currently. So I come down here and I just make it gray. And I can either just eat up some of it like that, which is probably the way I'm going to choose to do it, or I could select some of it and delete it until it's more filled. It really wouldn't matter which way you want to do that. That's actually kind of nice. So we'll keep it like that. So again, a plugin was really, really beneficial. And all I had to do was go to that manage or browse plugins in the top navigation, find a good one. This one's just called, it's literally just called lorem ipsum. And it gives me some believable filler text so that when I'm trying to get like client buy-in or show my boss or whomever my idea, they can get a good feel for it. When you're zoomed out, you're not focused on, well, that text looks weird. It looks like a whole bunch of just, gibberish because lorem ipsum looks semi-real. All right. That's that for typography. Does anybody have any questions about using text in XD?
I don't think so. Although I think when you clicked on the plugin, I don't think it showed the options maybe. But no other questions, no.
Oh, okay. What do you mean it didn't show the options? I'm not sure I understand. Oh, like my window wasn't sharing that little pop-up window?
I think because we're focused on the Adobe XD window, some of the other pop-ups don't populate.
I understand. Okay, I apologize. There was just a single extra window that popped up that said, do you want 5 rows of text? You want yada, yada, yada. I've always found the default to be fine. So I honestly just hit insert. Thanks for letting me know that. I did not know that. All right, so this one's called Add Icons and Organize Layers. And I touched on this a minute ago, but we're going to go ahead and click on this artboard. We're going to get into our layers. I want to open this up, and I think it's going to make a ton more sense what I meant by kind of top left to bottom right layer naming. So I've got a back button, and it's the first thing you it's the first thing you see. And it's also the first thing in our layer menu. And then I've got the latergram word mark. It's the next thing. I then have, that's wrong. The menu needs to go up because it's the third thing you see. So kind of top left to bottom right. Now we've got our avatar, then her name, the image placeholder, an icon for a thumbs up, an icon for a speech bubble, and then the lorem ipsum. This is a really, really nice way to organize your layers and your artboards. It will make your life a lot easier, and it will make you a favorite of web developers that you set your files up this way. If I didn't do it, the alternative is that technically this back button could be 2 rectangles. I don't even have to have them grouped. So they could just be called randomly rectangle 10 and rectangle 11. This menu could just be 3 ellipses just floating around. And even worse than that, sometimes you could have an ellipse up here, a here, and here. Even though they're together on your artboard, they're not necessarily grouped together in your layers. So it's a good idea to, once you've gone about this far, to go ahead and get into the naming. It takes just enough time that I'm going to break that rule mostly while we're designing today, but I just make sure that I kind of go over that you would probably want to take that extra 5-10 minutes around this step to make sure that your files are staying organized. So I'm going to copy this guy over so that everything is pixel perfect. And all we're going to add are the thumbs up and the conversation bubble. Now, I do suggest, especially if you're just starting out, that you attempt to draw icons yourself, of course. And I'm going to real quickly draw a similar conversation bubble, but then I'm also going to show you how lovely, especially at these early stages, how lovely using plugins can be. Because let's be honest, there are thousands of thumbs ups out there that have been drawn better than I can draw them, and conversation bubbles. If I were, let's say, doing, I don't know, a skiing app, I might really want to get into drawing like little crisscrossed skis and poles, or a little hat with the puffy thing on it. I think that as a designer, you want to use your creativity and your skills and your time smart. And in my opinion, thumbs ups and conversation bubbles are not necessarily where I want to direct my energies. That being said, let's go ahead and create one. So I'm going to start with a rectangle. And just go, I don't know, about like that. And you'll see that there's actually these little circles in the corners. And those, if I start dragging just one of them in, it'll drag all of them in equally. And that starts to create rounded corners. There's another way to do that. It's over here, right here. And I can just type in 5. And it'll give me 5 pixels of rounded corners. So again, it's kind of up to you, however you feel the most comfortable doing it. I don't want a border. I want that like that, and I want it to be gray so we can see it on the white board. And then I need a triangle. So I'm just going to draw a triangle. If I don't hold shift, similar to any of the other scaling, I can get all kinds of random shaped triangles. I think for right now, I want to hold shift. I want an equilateral triangle. I'm going to hover near and turn it around. Oops, I went too far. There we go. Again, turn off that and make it gray so we can see it. And we'll bring it in like that. And you can see that that's not looking very good. I don't care for that. So there's 2 things that need to happen. I need to stop having rounded corners. I need to get this kind of sorted in place. And in fact, what I really need to do is double click and move this one over. So again, let me do that a little bit slower. So if I only one click, I can scale and I can move, but I can't actually alter. If I double click, I actually get the ability to change all of the points. So I'm going to hover over that and click, and then just drag it over so that I have a triangle that looks more like that. And then I can move it into place like so. And I'm going to select both. And there's these things up here called Boolean operations. And if I hover, I think you'll be able to see it. They're very small. I apologize for that. This one's called add. And that just means that it's going to make these 2 shapes go together. This means subtract. This means intersect, and this means exclude. And I'm happy to quickly do these. So add is what I want. It now made one shape instead of a rectangle and a weird shaped triangle. I'm going to undo. Subtract, it actually removed the triangle that was overlapping the rectangle. Comes in super handy, like way more handy than you might think. I can't come up with an option right now for this interface, but it does come up. Intersect is the opposite. Everything except what was intersecting was removed. And finally, I actually don't know what that one's doing. I guess it's removing the piece that, yeah, it's removing the piece that it overlapped and nothing more. So again, we want to just add. And then I can still, I think, I can still change the corner radiuses. And now it's not so sharp, but it's not perfect. You can see even like I'm pretty good at this, and it's starting to curve up here. So I'm glad it did that, because again, that took me, even being pretty good at this, that took me 5 minutes, and it's okay. It's not great. So I'm going to go over here to plugins and icons for design. And there's a little search, and I'm just going to type in, I don't know, let's try like. So this particular icon designer decided that likes should always be hearts, and apparently that they should always be dislike. So that's not super useful. Let's try thumbs up. All right, let's try thumb. There we go. So sometimes it's a little bit of a push and pull to refine your search terms, the prompts that you're looking for. And I don't know, let's say this one. That seems nice. So all I did was click it over here in this layers menu, and it places it a little oddly at the top left of that artboard, but at least it's inside my artboard. I can then zoom in, move it into place. My circle was pretty arbitrary in size, so I think this one's fine. I can make it that gray because we're still not coloring things. And that quickly, I have probably a better thumbs up than I can personally draw. So now let's go over here in the icons plugin, still just all within that kind of layers panel over there to the, or plugins panel over to the left. And let's just type in, I actually know this from previous conversation, doesn't do anything, but bubble does. So there we go. This one seems nice. I'll click that. Again, it puts it up at the top left of the artboard. Oops. Let's just drag it into place. Zoom in. It's got very similar proportions, so I like that. I'll just get rid of this. I'll make it gray. And while mine's not too far off, mine's not as good as theirs, and it took me no time at all. So again, I think there's absolutely value in drawing icons when they're more fun, when they're more creative, when they add value to the overall interface. When they're more simple, homogeneous, every single app has them, I think a plugin is a really good choice for you. Any questions about using plugins and icons?
Not a question about plugins and icons, but Eleanor is asking, can you amend the font of all text in a project in one go?
Well, that's a super good question. I don't know. You did it. You stumped me. I know you can in things like InDesign and Illustrator. I do not know for sure if XD has a find and replace. I don't know if you'll be able to see my, yeah, you can't because it's the upper nav, therefore not being shared. View, edit. I really love that question, and I do apologize that I don't have an answer. Text. Currently in the thing that you can't see, that's really useful. I do not see anything that even resembles find and replace, so possibly not. However, you can make things like components, which I wasn't planning to do today. And if we have time, I might do a quick component where you would have like a button and or an icon or anything, and you can save those as something called a component for later use. If you change those, it will change across your entire project. But no, I don't know for sure if you can change everything. You can select and select, and then of course change these to whatever you want. But that's not quite the same. And obviously this is a real easy interface, single screen essentially. If I had, 45 different possible web pages, that's a super good question. I should know that answer. We need to look that one up. We may have to get back to you on that one. All right. So we're going to finally start adding photos, and then we'll add color. Same thing. We're just going to copy and paste this over. And there's multiple ways that we can do this. One would be to just have them saved on my computer in a folder. And that is the way I'm going to choose to finally do it. So you just would go to File and Import. I do apologize, you can't see that. I wish they would show you that top nav. A little pop-up window has occurred. It's like every single program you've ever used, and I can import, and it comes in at the size that it is. And it's a pretty good idea to use large photos for most of your designs. It's far better to have a little bit too much size than pixelation, especially if you're designing, say, a responsive website and not just a mobile size. This thing might need to get bigger and eventually would start to pixelate even if it looked really good on your mobile. So then I'll just scale this down. We'll use this in just a second because I want to show you one more use of plugins. So I can click on this rectangle and I can go to Unsplash Random Image. And you'll see that there's a little fill with image. And then I apologize, another pop-up window came up that you can't see. Let's just type in palm tree. So as the name suggests, Unsplash is a stock photo website, and random image means it's just going to put a random image. So it gave me some palm trees. It's nice. When you're at this stage of wireframing, you don't necessarily need to spend a lot of time looking for this exact photo. I gotta be honest, I actually really like that photo quite a bit. It's going to be very large. It'll come in to fit the shape that I was asking it to populate, but this will be more than large enough to do larger screens if need be. I think I'm going to ditch my old picture. I like this one quite a bit. And so again, you go over to your plugins panel, you click on the plugin you're looking for, in this case, Unsplash Random Image. When I clicked Fill with Image, another little pop-up window came in, and all I did was just type palm tree. So at this point, you might think, you know what? Because I'm gonna actually fill these avatars with that. So one more time, I'm gonna stop sharing my window. I want to share the whole. I want to make sure you're understanding what's happening there. So I'm going to share my entire screen for a second, and I do know that means everything's going to get a little bit smaller. I think it's going to be beneficial. So let me zoom way close in on this filler for Jane Smith. So I'm still using Unsplash Random Image, and when I click Fill with Image, now you can see the little pop-up that I was talking about. Let's just say female avatar. Why not? And it will randomly populate. Yeah, sure. That's great. Why not? Because again, these are fake people. It's supposed to get, shareholder buy-in or get the client excited. So there's no reason to be spending a ton of time searching for photos or taking photos of real people or whatever. However you might want to solve that. Using that system is a far easier, better way. Now, I could copy all of this by selecting it. Remember, if I select away from something, just kind of in the negative space and drag, that selects everything that I moved over. And holding Option or Alt, I can drag down. There'd be no reason whatsoever that that's a problem. That's a nice way of doing it. I do it that way quite often. But another way to do it would be to actually select those things and click this Repeat Grid. And you'll notice that I got, oh, nope, we're too small. Hold on. Stop sharing. I want to get back to just the interface so that you can really see. Okay. Great. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm actually going to undo so that it's not. So now you can see a little bit better. So up here in the top right is Repeat Grid. I've selected everything that has to do with a single user post, essentially. So it's their avatar and their name, the image that they were sharing, the social media kind of aspects and a little description. So that's kind of a singular post. And if I wanted to continue to do things like that, I could click repeat grid, and you'll see that I get a green handle over here. If I wanted it to be a horizontal scroll, I would use that side. And if I wanted it to be, in this case, a vertical scroll, I would use this side. What's nice about this, I'm going to zoom way out. What's nice about this is now it is all perfectly spaced. There's no variation, and it's all still totally editable. So I'm going to snap that back up, and we're going to go back in here. And just simply by double clicking, I now have selected that. And we want to name this now, I don't know, let's say Joe Smith. And so totally editable. Just because it's within a repeat grid does not mean that it's not something I can play with. I can then go back to my plugins, fill with image. You won't be able to see it, but all I'm typing is male avatar. It'll plug a guy in. He's a little bit smaller, but there we go. There's our Joe. I don't actually understand this one thing. It's kind of weird and annoying, but this image is not going to work in the same way, or it shouldn't. It hasn't in the past. But let me just type in skateboarder just to keep with our theme from the original. Oh, it did. Cool. There is a possibility they've actually fixed that, because it used to be that the repeat grid did involve me having to turn it off for a second to replace the large images. I'm excited that that's not true. So now if I click on the entire repeat grid and drag down, you'll see that I repeat him. So it just repeats whatever the final one is, and you can continue to change that as much as you need. That would, of course, come in handy for something like this, but it also comes in very handy for, say, e-commerce sites, something like an Amazon or whatnot, where you're going to have a repetition of products and things of that sort. So repeat grid is really, really a nice tool, super time saver. And then it's not permanent. All I have to do is say ungroup grid, and these things now are completely separate from each other and could be removed or changed in any number of ways. Let's say, I don't know, let's say that I actually want this one for some random reason to have curved corners. If it was within the repeat grid, I would not have been able to do that. It would have immediately changed this one. All right. Well, we're just about there. We're going to add some color, and then we're going to go over some. Oh, yes.
Great. We have two questions. One from Daniel. I think you mentioned something about image size and pixelation. Can the image size, pixelation, and multiple devices comment be explained again?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. All right. Oh, preview of something else we're going to look at. Don't look in the far right. Okay, so let's see here. File and import. And let me bring in that first palm tree picture. So it's big, like it's real big, like stupid big. But it's been optimized in such a way that it's not like, 100 megabytes or something. It's big in dimension, not necessarily in like file space that would kill your user experience. So let me just real quickly, I'm going to put 2 or 3 artboards. So I'm going to give us our iPhone, and it put it way down there for some reason. Let me zoom in a little bit. I'm going to give us an iPhone, and then I'm going to give us another artboard that is, say, an iPad. Great. And then I'm going to give us one more that is like a laptop. So again, this picture is really big, probably slightly too big to be completely honest. But let's just say that, I don't know, it was being used in something like this. There was a logo, like it was a welcome screen, and then the website on mobile just goes long down. So this is called responsive design. If the image was actually only this big, when I got over here to a desktop size, I wouldn't be able to scale it up anymore, because every bit that I scaled it to now make more sense. And again, this isn't the best picture, obviously, because of the way that it's cropping. But if I'm trying to recreate a similar experience where there's going to be some text and such down below, you're just now looking at it on your computer instead of on your phone. If that image was only that big, scaling it up that much is going to blow up the resolution. It's going to look terrible. So it's better to have an image that's enormous. Let me do that one more time. We'll see how big that one was. This way, I basically can't find a screen or browser size that's going to be this big. And that's the original photo, and it's not pixelated at that size. So I can then be assured that across any device within reason, it will always look really nice. Does that help with that? Responsive design is a little bit of a tricky concept. I hope that made some more sense.
I think that was great. Also, we've got one additional question from Azel. How do you crop a photo to your desired dimensions if it was imported from your computer?
Great idea. Great question. Couple different ways. Let's go ahead and go here since we've been working on a phone. So first, I just scaled it, and then XD sort of essentially crops it when you put it onto an artboard, so that I can't see the outsides. But maybe we don't want this much of a rectangle. Maybe we want, I don't know, let's say a triangle. Just for fun, we're going to do a triangle. So you grab the tool and you draw a triangle. And now it's off the screen, so I made that too big. Yeah, something like that. And let me go to my layers, because that's kind of important. So I've got a polygon and the photo. I need to select both, and then right-click, mask with shape. The photo is still there, and it's totally movable and editable. I can make it smaller so that more of the photo shows up in the triangle, but it's now masked by that triangle. And then obviously a triangle is an odd choice. I just wanted to do it because it helps show how the masking is working, but technically you'd probably want to do something like this. You select both, you'd say mask with shape. And now you've got it in the shape, your desired shape. And so also for this one, that's exactly how I would have done this. I had already drawn a rectangle, so I would have brought in my palm tree. I would have set it in place, and I would have selected the original gray rectangle that we've had for multiple iterations and the photo, and then I would just said mask. All good?
Awesome. That's everything so far. Yep.
Good. All right, cool. So now we're gonna add some color. It's that time. We've been using this gray wireframe color all the way through. Color in Instagram is real easy. I had saved some colors as I showed you earlier, and we'll use that here in a second. But let's say I want, instead of using this kind of reddish salmon color, I want to do a different color for our demo today. So you click in the appearance panel over in the inspector. You just click the gray square. And this whole dialogue situation happens. So I can go from white, and it's happening in real time. If you look over here, you'll see. So as I'm dragging with my cursor, it's also changing. So I could go from white to black. I could go to kind of a rust burgundy color. I could go to absolute bright red. And that's just the reds. That's where it started. I can go up through the whole spectrum of color. Again, it's changing in real time. And yeah, I don't know. Let's say maybe I actually want more of a cyan color. So I can just do that. And then if I really, really like that color, I can come over here and say add, and it'll stay put for me as a color that I can continue to reference as I design. And then everything else, I can just click and shift click and shift click. Oops. Oh, see, that's one thing where the repeat grid. So I can click this one and this one. I'm not allowed to also simultaneously click the word Jane Smith or these icons. It's okay. It doesn't matter. I think this sort of dark gray looks nice, so I'm going to go ahead and click that one so that it stops being quite so subtle as the gray we've been using for the wireframes. It starts to seem intentional. I can then click on Jane and the icons and her text. So it'll allow me within each sort of little quadrant to shift click more than one thing, but I was not able to click things outside of the repeat grid. and then just Joe Smith. We could come down here, but it's not. Well, what the heck? Even though they're off the artboard, we can go ahead and change them. So now they're all dark gray. And again, it's infinitely changeable. And let's say somebody had liked this picture. So we can click on this one. Maybe we want to show our boss or the client how we envision likes looking. Maybe it just turns blue like the logo, or that's not real inspired. Maybe actually it stops being filled. It starts having a border, and that border, whoops, starts having a border. Let's see here. Why isn't it letting me do that? I don't know what's happening. It won't let me grab the blue color for my border. Well, that's fine. We'll just go like that. There's always a way. Anyway, and maybe it needs to be thicker. Who knows? Again, this is all the design process and all the decisions that you would make. So we can make this 2 pixels thick, and now it has a little more presence when zoomed out. So maybe that's actually the way that we want to say when something's liked, it turns in. That's probably backwards of UX. We probably would want them to be outlined and then become filled. But I'm just trying to show you how you would use the interface to change things to however you like it. That's from start to finish. We've added some circles and rectangles, some text, photos, and color, and we've got a pretty believable little photo sharing app. If there's no questions, I'd like to show you another 5 minutes of where I think we as designers really add value. William, is there anything I should address right now?
No, I think we're good.
Awesome. All right. So it's all well and good to recreate things, and obviously for the purposes of a demo, it's important to have something that maybe you're familiar with. But yesterday, a quick search of Dribbble and Behance for photo sharing apps, and it was just bewildering how not interesting they were. They were all Instagram lookalikes, and I thought, well, no, that's not the point. Yes, they've done a great job at Instagram, and it is a little bit hard to break free from that box. It's the same thing with like a music app. I'm not really sure that you can design a music app much better than, say, Spotify or Apple, but hopefully that's still where our energy and why we're being hired and why we're enthusiastic about this. So I put some time to it, and I thought, well, what about the old school slides that photographers used? What if we, instead of worrying about an app where we share our photos with others and they have the ability to like or comment or whatever, what if I actually created an app that digitally sort of brings back some of that nostalgia, and people with their slides would have these huge carousels and cases full of them, and they would handwrite that they were at the Grand Tetons, and maybe some journaling abilities so they can talk about this vacation that they took and the beautiful photos that they took on that trip, and maybe again, instead of sharing with others, it's much more about them being able to edit the photos, color and crop, add text, and et cetera, et cetera. And then, again, maybe it's much more about the photographer and them being able to really get in and enjoy their photos. Things like Instagram fall a little short when you want to zoom in. You can kind of take your fingers and zoom, but it always snaps right back. And so I thought, well, what if this app, when you turn the phone sideways, it actually is the full size of the photo, the biggest it can possibly be. And photographers use a thing called a photo loop. It's basically a little magnifying glass of sorts. And maybe they could use their fingers and really zoom in and investigate the photo that they had taken. So just playing around with the idea. The point being that I think that the brand, the idea behind why we're designing, I think is really, really important. And once you've learned the basics of the interface and feel comfortable, that's hopefully where you'll spend your energies and your time. That's it. That's my presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. That was a really good introduction. And I think you've gone through the whole process. So I think step by step, you can see exactly that you can take such a kind of like a basic idea, and within the space of an hour, we've managed to actually recreate what looks like a almost ready to go app. So that's great. We've got a couple of questions coming in, some more general questions. I think this is a great question from Gotham. I'm a QA tester for 5 years now. I found my interest in UI and UX. How should I break my way into a career in UI design?
I think that's great. You already, I think in some ways, I think you have an advantage working with QA. You know what doesn't work. And that's really important. A lot of designers maybe are coming at design from a purely artistic or aesthetic perspective. How to break in? I think being signed up for a webinar like this is great. I think that a course such as CareerFoundry's UI immersion would definitely be a good idea. It's about a 9-month program. Most students finish in about 9 months. You have a tutor, you have a mentor, that you have calls just like this, like literally I'm right here, or your mentor's right here, and we screen share. We can solve things. I can't tell you how many times I've had a student who I screen share for 10 minutes and we solve it and they're like, oh my gosh, I spent 6 hours yesterday. So there's a lot of support that way. But breaking in, it's a great time to do so. I think it's still very much a growth industry. And if you've got a love for it, take those steps, follow that.
Awesome. At this moment, I'll also say we've got some great free materials too on the CareerFoundry blog and also on the CareerFoundry YouTube channel. And a little bit earlier, I shared a link to the CareerFoundry UI design short course. I think it's a 5 or a 6 day, lots of free material. And for anybody who's thinking about taking the first steps, I would say it's a good place to start. And it's absolutely free. So there's no reason you can't jump in there. Laura's got an interesting question. What do you think are the main differences between Adobe XD and Figma?
I love this question. So you guys probably didn't notice, but I'm now starting to accidentally use Figma key commands. So the biggest difference is the key commands. Yeah, CareerFoundry's had me using Figma quite a bit because they're adding it to their curriculum. And it's been a little trial by fire. Being a designer of 20 some years, I'm so familiar with the Adobe ecosystem that XD feels just like an old friend. And so I had to learn Figma over the last, let's say, year. Figma's very easy. They all three of these programs, actually, Sketch as well, they didn't reinvent the wheel. And you will find tools in a very similar place. They will look the same. They will have very similar key commands. The inspector or property panel over to the right is very similar. I would say the one major difference, and it is a big reason that Figma has taken off and had such a buzz, is the pandemic and everyone working remotely and having that real-time cloud-based situation definitely helps. I believe XD and Sketch do have a beta version of that, so they probably will be rolling that out. So even that might not be necessarily a major differentiation here in the near future. They're both wonderful. I would actually suggest learning at least 2 of the 3, and the reason I say that is if you knew Figma and XD and you got a job that used Sketch, I swear within an afternoon you would know how to use it. They're that similar. So
I think at this point too, I'll also just share in the chat. There is a link to CareerFoundry's events because Craig is going to be doing an introduction to Figma later in July. So if anyone's enjoyed this one, and this is the intro to Adobe XD, then we're also doing an intro to Figma where we will be designing a surf app. So you can kind of see the differences between the two. I've got a question from the in-house team coming in. The YouTube team would like to know, what are your favorite resources for staying up to date with UI design?
Oh, that's great. I really enjoy reading Medium articles. I find Medium to be an awesome resource. I do like Behance and Dribble. They're a little more superficial, like just more inspiration, excitement, maybe when I'm trying to generate new ideas. But I use those pretty regularly. Pinterest. I'm on Pinterest and Tumblr, Instagram, like all those things. Those aren't necessarily UI specific. Medium probably is the #1 where I read a lot, more specific, like industry stuff. I'm actually drawing a blank on one that I really like, Smashing Magazine. I like them quite a bit.
Awesome. And then in terms of UI design, what's your favorite app to use and why?
Like somebody else's app? What's my favorite?
Yeah,
Oh,
somebody else's.
that's a fun question. I like that. Well, I live in Costa Rica. I don't know if we went over that. I live in Costa Rica, and so I use the weather app quite a bit. I very much enjoy watching the radar and seeing when we're going to get like a tropical storm or something. I use a meditation app every day called what the heck is it? Oak. I think it's just beautifully designed. They use watercolor paintings, and everything about the UI of that is just perfect. Like it lends itself to the reason that one would click on that and use that app. So from a purely UI aesthetic standpoint, I'm going with Oak.
And also Heidi's asking, Heidi is a web designer, so already has a creative mind, but is asking how difficult is it to switch from web design into UI design?
So if I'm interpreting web design correctly, I'm assuming like a developer that you're writing code, you're the unicorn that they're all looking for. So you should have no trouble at all. Once you learn how to make the pictures and add them with the code, you're in. So.
And also, I'm sure Craig will back me up, but actually lots of the students that we have at CareerFoundry are also career changers. So we also take people from all ages, and most of the people have got a lot of experience behind them. And that's great because actually you're bringing a lot of soft skills to the position, to the course, and then also to those job interviews afterwards. So CareerFoundry is not just about, jumping on these fresh courses and bringing no experience. Bringing that experience is fantastic because you'll be able to use that going forward. I'm just mindful of the time. It is moving on. Craig, thank you so much for doing the Adobe XD workshop again. We're going to be doing this again in the future. And as I said, we're also going to be doing later in the month the intro to Figma. So if anyone enjoyed this, I would definitely recommend joining the intro to Figma just to see what Figma's like in comparison to Adobe XD. I'll also be sending around a mail tomorrow with the recording and some additional links. So if there's anything you might have missed today that you can check up again, and definitely do that UI design short course that's full of great materials, also written by our curriculum team here at CareerFoundry. So you'll be getting the stuff that we give to our students normally. So it's a great little intro. And last but not least, in July, we're also offering an early bird offer. So it's worth up to $1,350 or 1,125 euros off the full price of our UI design program. All you have to do to get that is just book a call with a program advisor. Put a little sticky note up in the top right-hand corner. Our program advisors are online and they're waiting to take your calls. If you've got any questions about jobs in your locality, maybe the CareerFoundry curriculum, maybe exactly what the dual mentorship model is, what interactions you'll have with your mentor and tutor, and also the job guarantee. If you've got any of those kind of general questions about the CareerFoundry program, I would highly recommend booking a call with a program advisor, and that is a fantastic offer that we are offering for July. So all you need to do is click the link there. I'll also send that around in the email tomorrow so that you can click there and book a call. And with that said, Craig, thank you once again. I'll be seeing you later in the month for the Figma session. And thank you everybody in the audience for all your fantastic questions. And both Craig and I hope to see you on one of the programs soon to change your career.
Yeah, thank you everybody. It was a pleasure.